Hello, my name is Mark Oyster, and today I will be talking to you about cherry pollination. So, why is cherry pollination important? Well, the first reason is popularity. Cherries have been increasing in consumption and production value since the 2000s, and they have increased faster than other fruits. And so, with an increased demand of cherries, there's an increased need for cherry pollination. An increased need for cherry pollination means an increased need for bees. But going further than that, bees actually prefer gathering cherry nectar over other fruits. And so it's not only important for humans, but it's important for bees that cherry pollination occurs. And the reason bees prefer gathering cherry nectar, there's a couple of them, but the primary one is that cherry trees are generally larger than other fruit trees and have higher densities of flowers. And so a scout honeybee might find a cherry tree and go back to their colony, perform the waggle dance, and tell their colony that they found a high concentration of flowers and nectar in a small area, which generally speaking, the honeybees will go for, especially because cherry trees are also have the one of the highest concentrations of sugar in their nectar, which bees generally prefer. For most fruit trees, it's between 10 to 30%, but for cherry trees, it can be upwards of 60%. Furthermore, there was a study done in Virginia where they tested the cherry output of a caged versus an uncaged cherry tree, where the caged cherry tree was blocked from being pollinated by honeybees. And what they found was that the caged cherry tree produced about 2 kilograms of cherries, whereas the uncaged produced about 35 kilograms or 77 pounds of cherries. And 97% of the insects that visited the uncaged cherry tree were honeybees. And so what this means is that honeybees are not only good pollinators of cherry trees, they are basically the exclusive pollinator of cherry trees. And so without them, we basically don't have cherries. And so where is all this cherry pollination occurring? Well, the answer to that is primarily Italy and Japan. And there's two main reasons for this. The first one being the ideal climate. It's pretty temperate, pretty warm, which is good for cherry trees. The weather is slightly more consistent than other areas. But second of all, cherry trees require a lot of cross-pollination to actually produce fruit. And so, because of the traditions in Italy and Japan, there's a lot of diverse different types of cherry trees all across the regions, which increases the likelihood that bees will cross-pollinate these cherry trees and produce cherries. And so, because of that, getting pollination done in a short amount of time because of the 8-day blooming period of cherry trees, it's really important that beekeepers and orchardists maintain that efficiency in that short amount of time. And something I found that quite interesting is that there's a study that found that when honeybees and mason bees pollinate cherry orchards together, they increase the cherry output significantly than if they were to just do one on their own. What they found in the study was that if a honeybee colony versus or a mason bee colony pollinated a cherry orchard by themselves, the amount of flowers that were pollinated to produce fruit was about 20% on the low end for just them by themselves. But when the honeybees and mason bees were combined, the high end of the production was 70%, which is significantly more, almost 3 times the amount. And so this is vitally important for any beekeepers that want to produce cherries or orchardists that are trying to maximize their cherry output. And there's a couple of reasons that are theorized about why this occurs, but the primary theory is that the mason bees and the honeybees interrupt each other's pollinating patterns, and which influences each other to go hop to different cherry trees, thus increasing the amount of cross-pollination, thus increasing the amount of cherries that are outputted. Well, thank you for listening to me talk about cherry pollination.